At the very height of the Roman Empire, one emperor chose, in the darkest hours of the night, to flee to a lonely island perched on sheer cliff faces, Tiberius, a name written in history as strange, cold, and sinister. But who has ever truly heard the sound of his world falling apart? Tonight, by the soft, flickering fire, let us step into his real life, to dissect a soul torn endlessly between power and crippling loneliness. Some stories are only meant to be told after dark, such as the long, suffocating later years of Tiberius that he sat on the edge of a cliff on Capri, watching the waves devour everything, just as power devoured his dignity. This is no glorious tale of conquest. It is the inner monologue of a man destroying himself amid the ruins of his own life. Close your eyes, and in this slow, unhurried rhythm, feel the loneliness that has echoed across 2,000 years. He had everything, yet only wished to be invisible. Tiberius remains the most contradictory figure in Roman history, living in the overwhelming shadow of Augustus. He spent his entire life forced to play a role he loathed. When the last mask was torn away, only the dappled moonlight of Capri remained. In this extended reflection, let us walk alongside this lonely old man toward his final fate. Prologue. If a man rules the entire civilized world, yet only longs to rot alone on a cliffside, what exactly is he running from? In the golden age of the Roman Empire, on the jagged cliffs of Capri, an old man spent his days staring down into the abyss of the Mediterranean. He was Tiberius, the second emperor of Rome, cursed by the whole world, and who cursed the world in return. Tonight, by the gently dancing fire, let us enter his true life through this story that need not be memorized with effort. He felt the deepest cold while sitting on the most exalted throne, and even on his deathbed, he plotted how to be forgotten by the world. Tonight we will not speak of Caesar's ambition, nor of Augustus's prosperity. We will speak of how a human soul slowly withers beneath the poison of absolute power. Let your mind calm to the sound of waves. Our story begins with the moment he was forced into exile, from himself. Chapter 1, The First Crack Beneath the Mask. Tiberius's life began not with glory, but with a cruel, deliberate unraveling. In his early 30s, he was a man in the full bloom of life, deeply in love with his wife Vipsania. But in Rome, under the calculating eye of Augustus, private affection was as fragile as a cicada's wing. For the sake of the imperial bloodline, Augustus ordered Tiberius to divorce the woman he adored and marry Julia, the disreputable widowed daughter of the emperor. On the day he received the command, Tiberius sat motionless in his study all night. When the candle burned out, the light in his eyes died with it. For decades afterward, he wore a mask, the perfect, unflinching, ice-cold servant of the empire. Yet one day, by chance on the street, he caught sight of his former wife Vipsania. In full public view, Tiberius broke down. He wept openly as he followed her carriage, until his guards forcibly pulled him away. After that, Augustus forbade Tiberius from ever seeing her again, even from hearing her name spoken aloud. This jagged wound taught Tiberius a brutal lesson. His proud title, his military victories, his very identity were nothing but sacrifices to the imperial machine. He fell silent. His famous coldness took root that night, his first silent protest against the world that had stolen his heart. He no longer believed in the sincerity of human emotion, for sincerity only brought agony. And so he learned to build his own kingdom out of lies. Chapter 2, The Chosen Backup and the Curse of Power. Tiberius never imagined he would become emperor. On Augustus's list of heirs, he was always last. He was the perfect tool, the guardian of the empire's frontiers, but never the favored son. Yet fate played a vicious joke. One by one, the heirs Augustus cherished died young, from illness, accident, and political misfortune. When Tiberius, now in his 50s, was finally adopted by Augustus, the emperor publicly sighed, "Poor Rome," to fall between those slow jaws. Those words pierced Tiberius's sensitive pride like a blade. He understood he was not a choice, he was a last resort. On the day he received the imperial authority, Tiberius resisted before the Senate as never before. He even begged the senators to let him govern only a portion of state affairs. Men assumed it was political theater, false modesty. But if you look past the grand rhetoric, you see genuine, paralyzing fear. He feared the cold of the throne. He feared the political whirlwind that had already stolen his wife, his happiness, his very self. Still, he took the throne. For in that era, the imperial crown was either a reward, or a scaffold. Like a laborer forced to carry a burden too heavy to bear, he began his 23-year reign. This sense of coercion curdled into a vengeful indifference toward Rome. He held no gladiatorial games. He built no grand monuments. He merely signed documents mechanically, staring coldly at the kneeling aristocracy. Chapter 3, The Shadow of Sejanus and the Abyss of Betrayal. Sickened by the corruption and pretense of Roman politics, Tiberius raised up a praetorian prefect named Sejanus. Sejanus became the only man Tiberius trusted, his partner in my labors, as the emperor called him. But once Tiberius withdrew to his private retreat on Capri, Sejanus wove a terrifying web of power across Rome. He poisoned Drusus, Tiberius's only son, and plotted endlessly to seize the throne for himself. When letters exposing the conspiracy reached the aging emperor on his island, the last flicker of warmth in Tiberius's heart died forever. Imagine, a man already worn thin by loneliness discovers that his only trusted companion is the very man who murdered his own flesh and blood. Tiberius stood for hours on the cliffs of Capri, the wind tangling his thinning hair that he did not lash out in rage. He moved like a spider, slowly, precisely, orchestrating a purge across the sea. Sejanus was executed in a single day. His body was torn to pieces in the Roman streets, and on his island, Tiberius listened only to the waves. This betrayal confirmed his darkest belief: humanity was inherently vile. And as ruler, the only gift he could give the world was fear. His character grew more bitter and unstable. Capri became synonymous with terror. He himself became a prisoner on that island that he no longer cared for justice. He only cared about who might betray him next, even if it existed only in his nightmares. Chapter 4, Capri, the End of the Human Experiment. Tiberius lived on Capri for 11 years. He never set foot in Rome again, not even for his own son's funeral that he built 12 magnificent villas across the island, each a fortress sealed off from the world. It was here that he began a lifestyle later historians described as perverse and cruel. That he gathered astrologers, philosophers, and a strange group known as the Spintrii, performers of twisted, secret entertainments. Palaces blazed with light late into the night, yet no laughter echoed. Tiberius drowned his existential emptiness in wine and bizarre, cruel amusements. He would force guests to debate philosophy on the very edge of a cliff. Those who answered poorly might be thrown to the rocks below. This was not mere cruelty. It was the mockery of an utterly despairing man toward the hypocrisy of civilization that he saw through the lies of society, the absurdity of power, and so he chose to dance on the ruins. By moonlight on Capri, he often wandered alone to the cliff edge. It is said he more than once considered leaping, but he told himself that if he died, his suffering would end, and he was not yet done watching senators tear each other apart in terror. In these extreme acts, he chased a kind of sick pleasure, loneliness twisted to its furthest extreme. Everyone who came to the island wore a mask, just as Tiberius had worn one his entire life. Chapter 5, The Heir's Conspiracy and Final Loneliness. In his final years, Tiberius did little but watch his heir, the young Caligula. Caligula behaved on Capri like a gentle, obedient cat. Even after Tiberius executed most of his family, he showed no hint of hatred. Tiberius laughed coldly as he judged his successor: "I am raising a viper for Rome." He saw through Caligula's disguise. Yet he did nothing to stop him. A mad heir, he decided, would be the perfect revenge on the city that had stolen his soul. In a cold spring of the year 37 AD, Tiberius's health collapsed completely. On his way back to Rome, he fell deathly ill at a villa in Misenum. According to legend, once physicians declared him dead, Caligula immediately celebrated and placed the imperial ring on his own finger. Then, to the horror of everyone present, the old emperor suddenly stirred, weakly asking for food. In that suffocating moment, Macro, the successor to Sejanus, pressed a pillow over the face of the man who had ruled the world for 23 years, and silenced him forever. Tiberius died in the quiet of early morning, with no hymns, no mourning, only hastily muffled breaths. When word of his death reached Rome, crowds flooded the streets shouting, "To the Tiber with Tiberius." They demanded his body be thrown into the river like a common criminal. He had spent a lifetime despising the Roman people. And in the end, they returned his hatred in full. He had lived as a ghost on the throne of the world. After death, he became a stain deliberately erased from memory. Epilogue. Tiberius's life is the ultimate portrait of coercion and loneliness. The puzzle we posed at the beginning, why flee to an island, now has its answer. He was not running from his enemies. He was running from the broken, false self that Augustus had forced him to become. What he truly left behind is the crumbling ruins of Capri, and a long, trembling sigh into the abyss of human nature. He ruled the world, yet could not keep even his own memories. That is the cruelest irony power can inflict upon a mortal man. Now the fire fades low. The sound of the waves drifts away. The lonely old man has vanished into the mist of history. Perhaps in his dreams, he returns to the afternoon before his divorce, to a time when he was simply Tiberius, not Emperor of Rome. May this heavy story bring you a quiet comfort in the value of ordinary, truthful life. Good night. May you rest deeply and peacefully, wrapped in the still sea winds of Capri.